Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be returning to the world of Roshar in the Stormlight archive and talking about book 3.5, which is technically a novella, and that is Dawnshard. I will go into this review under the impression that you have read at least up until Oathbringer. I won't spoil the novella itself, and obviously I can't spoil anything in the future. I haven't read it yet, but I am going to cover this novella with the assumption that you have at least read up into Oathbringer. So keep that in mind as I go through this review. So what is Dawnshard about? So if you remember in Oathbringer, there was an interlude about a ship and a crew with a soulcaster that went to this very mysterious island, and all of the trials and tribulations they went through, and then what happened to the crew at the end. It's very ominous, very mysterious, and it was actually one of the things that I was most curious about moving forward. I was hoping we would get some answers to that in Oathbringer. I think I even said in my Oathbringer review that I wanted to know more about this island and like what's going on, and like obviously I thought that some very large implications were going to come from this island. And lucky for me, Dawnshard covers a second trip to this island that actually involves Risen, which is a character we see at the end of Oathbringer, and not just at the end, but throughout some of Oathbringer. She is the character that is in a wheelchair, and she gets to take her ship that she gets at the during Oathbringer and gets to go on an expedition with some Radiants and to explore this island and kind of see what's going on. That ghost ship that they're calling it, the ship that went to the island, is discovered, and there's a lot of questions about what's going on, and so that is their goal. Their goal is to get to this island, figure out what's going on. Part of the mystery of the island is that there is a storm that is going around the island that is stopping storm runners from getting through it. There are creatures that are coming and sucking the stormlight out of them, which obviously is very intriguing. They also know that there is an oath gate there, and obviously oath gates are basically the most important thing going on in this world right now as far as like a physical thing that somebody could obtain, probably even more important than shards and blades. So that is kind of the gist of what it is, and obviously the crew goes through many trials, tribulations to get to the island, and there's a nice mystery element that gets mixed into it. And that's actually one of the things I really liked about this. So I'll go ahead and start talking about some of the stuff I liked. And the mystery, which actually a lot of the mystery is in Oathbringer about this island. You just really don't get a lot. The Oathbringer story about this actually makes me really wonder some of the stuff that happens with soulcasters as well. But this island itself, obviously something very important is going on there, and there are some of those other worldly beings taking control, or not taking control, but very, very much worried about what people will do if they get to this island. And that mystery really propelled me through a lot of this. When I initially read this, I gave this novella a 4-star, which is very high for me. I normally don't give novellas 4-star. This is one of the better novellas I've ever read. If I had to say, it's probably the best fantasy novella I've ever read. I don't know, I'd have to really look at my list. But that mystery is really what propelled me through this story. I will say, I don't think I was exceptionally satisfied with the resolution to the mystery we get overall. It's, I don't know, maybe part of the problem is I don't understand it, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in my dislikes. Let's stick with the positives. Another positive I've really had is the character we really follow through here, Risen. I really like the representation here. And in the introduction to this novella, Sanderson talks about how he had, I don't remember exactly what they're called, but people with whatever ailment that he's trying to write about. Obviously, Sanderson is not a man in a wheelchair. He doesn't know what it's like to be that person, but he reaches out to people who are in a wheelchair and do have these experiences so that he can kind of learn from their experiences and put those into the books, which I think is great representation. And I think the way it was done really reflected on that, and like how great it is, and how this Risen as a character, she has these feelings of like, man, this sucks what happened to me, but she's not letting it just stop her, and like not letting it define her. She's still trying to move forward and do the things that she still wanted to do. And I don't know, I really thought it was well done, and done with some creative things to make the magic in this world, how would this world with all this interesting magic, with fabrials and everything, how would that handle somebody in a wheelchair? I don't know. I thought it was really great, and I think that extra attention to detail and that world building that Sanderson is doing, and like this is a novella, so he has that time to kind of, this might seem out of place in Stormlight's already 1,000+ pages, but this seems like such a good place to have some of this little bit of world building that's on like such an individual level. It's not like the overall world building of like cultures and everything. This is like a very individual, like how normal people would be affected in this world. And I don't know, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I talked about how this novella expanded the world for an individual, but I think the creatures and some of the more mysterious elements that we were introduced to on the island and getting to the island itself really expand this world even more. I keep thinking about how this world just keeps growing and growing and growing to the point where I'm just really, really impressed. You know, in most fantasy worlds, you are at most on like a continent, and that continent, you know, has a few different countries, and inside those countries, you really kind of have maybe like, at best, 3-ish different kind of cultures, and Stormlight just continuously seems like they're adding areas, and it's not even just people, like humans, or the Voidbringers, or well, the listeners and all of that. It's like other dimensional beings and everything. And I know this all is going to come back and tie into the Cosmere. And every time I read a Sanderson book at this point, I just am wondering how in the world is this interconnected universe going to kind of culminate into one point. I've never heard that Sanderson plans for that to happen, but to me it seems like clearly, and maybe it's the last Stormlight book, you know, there's supposed to be 10 of them. Maybe in that last Stormlight book, pretty much everything he has written is going to culminate into like one final thing. I think he said he has like a plan for how it's all going to come together, and I used to doubt it. I used to just be like, man, I mean, he's a great writer, but I don't know how he can do all of this to the level he has been. And I know this is just a novella, but just this creativity over and over again of what he's able to do, I don't know, it just blows me away. And so once again, the world building on both an individual level and like the greater world of Roshar level has just been awesome. Now let me talk about a few of my dislikes. My first one is the humor in this one was very hit and miss for me. It felt like a little bit too much Lopin. I think Lopin is a funny character in like really short spurts. I don't need like crazy amounts of him, and him being basically one of the 3 main characters in this story, it's just a little bit too much. I didn't need it as much Lopin. And you know, this is a problem I think I've had in multiple Sanderson books. I'm really thinking of Mistborn Era 1, where I didn't really care about some of the side characters as much as I think maybe other people did, or as much as Sanderson does himself. To me, a lot of the side characters are just that. They're serving like a purpose. Like Lopin should be like a funny, like one-liner, kind of out of the story kind of person. And he's obviously not going to be that. He's obviously getting more and more important to the overall story in itself. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I know even in Mistborn Era 2, a lot of people feel about that way with Wayne. They don't think his humor. And I think Wayne and Lopin's humor are kind of similar, and that those characters have more parallels than I thought originally. And as Lopin becomes more important to the story, it's not like a bad thing, but it's also not something I'm like in love with, especially if he can't evolve past kind of being that one-trick pony of he's a one-darn Nerdazian. Like I don't know, I need some more growth. I need him to have a little bit more, and I think we see a little bit at the end of this novella, but I don't know, if he's going to continually be this important of a character, I need more out of him than just, you know, funny one-liners, which, you know, maybe others feel differently, but I think getting this much of a dose of him at once was just too much. My next issue is, I'm not sure, and this will probably be something that will either be answered in Rhythm of War or you know, in future books. I don't know how important the item that they get. I'm gonna be vague so that you don't, for spoiler reasons. The item that Risen gets in this story, I don't really understand how powerful or important it is yet. Obviously, I think it is, but I don't have an answer for it right now. And unfortunately, when the whole point of this novella seems to be to tell this story of how this thing happened, I would have liked a little bit more of like, other than just, instead of telling me how important it is, at least tell me why. You're just saying, hey, this is important, this is important, this is important. Tell me why, or give some kind of example. I don't know, I just needed a little bit more about that. And then my last negative for this, it's not even a negative, this is a hard novella to have negatives for. It's just a really fast-paced, kind of fun story. But how important is this story? Did this really need to be a novella, especially kind of a longer novella? Could this have not just been like a quick couple of chapters in Rhythm of War? I feel like this maybe, I mean, you wouldn't have gotten some of the character growth, especially around Risen and some of the other crew that she sails with. So like, I understand that, but I don't know how important this story itself is. Like, I feel like it could have just I don't know. I feel like this could have been like 3 extra chapters, like 50 extra pages in Rhythm of War. And I mean, that's already a super long book, so maybe that's part of the reason why. But it would have gotten the same point across. And I don't really want to complain about being in this world, because this is definitely one of my more favorite fantasy worlds. But in general, it just kind of leaves me wondering how important this is going to be in the long run. And is this one that, if I had skipped it, like, am I going to read Rhythm of War? This is kind of what I'm worried about, is, am I going to read Rhythm of War and be like, oh, why did I waste time and money buying Dawnshard and listening to it when somebody explained it in 6 paragraphs in Rhythm of War? That's one negative I have, and I can't answer that question yet, but it's definitely something in the back of my mind that I'm worried about. But that is all I have to say for Dawnshard. Let me know if you have read this, what you think, what your feelings about Stormlight overall are up until this point, and as always, have a good one.